Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the PH Journals podcast. Once again, I am going to apologize. I haven't been good at this. I've got to get into a better habit. Unfortunately, on this episode, there's no story, but we will catch up. I've got two really incredible stories that I would like to share with you guys. And but yeah, we're getting there. As you can hear, my voice is a little bit hoarse. I'm still overcoming this sickness that I've had for the past couple of weeks. It hit me man down. Today was probably one of the worst, but anyway, we're back up and we're going, and we've got a hunt to plan for next week. Very interesting topic. It's something that's been high on the topic discussion list at the moment across the hunting industry, and it's something I'm going to be revisiting. This episode I have done before, and it's something I'm going to touch on again. So I think it's very, very important. But before we get into it, I just want to take this opportunity to thank everyone involved with Zwai's story. Sean, Wayne, everything you guys have done. Zwei has managed to find a leg. There's a lot of donations pouring in through the Back Buddy account. We've essentially got somebody that's going to assist him with the fitting of the leg in Port Elizabeth, Kabeja, now known. So the whole story is just unraveling before our eyes, and we are forever grateful. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of Wayne, but I'm sure he's immensely grateful for all the effort that's happened. I'm super excited because Wayne joins me on the hunt next week, and Zwei will be one of the skinners on that hunt. So I'm looking forward to meeting the guy in person, and hopefully creating a very special bond. He's done some incredible things for the industry, and it's only about time the industry pays him back. So, without further ado, let's get into this week's episode of the podcast. So, guys, hot on the discussion list is free range, half fence, low fence, cattle ranch, concessions, conservancies, however you want to look at it. It's an interesting topic. Now, in some of the most recent discussions along a couple of platforms, there have been instances where people, I believe, have overused the word free range. Now, for us to understand the whole terminology behind this all, let's discuss it bit by bit. But I'm going to break it down into three different categories. I'm going to break it down into free range, fenced, concessions, or farms, cattle farms, stock farms, however you want to see it, and then half fence hunting. So first things first, let's break it down. What is free range hunting? Well, what I've got here and what I've jotted down is there's no perimeter fencing. No perimeter fencing. 1.4 meters to 2.4 meters, however you want to look at it, none of it. And animals roam freely. They embrace their natural migration patterns. They embrace natural feeding patterns, drinking patterns, whatever the case may be, and not physically managed. Half fence is obviously your fence is high enough so that the jumpers generally can't get out. It's a perimeter fence which controls movement, controls the range of migration to and from watering holes. There are manipulated systems within there from feeding patterns, because oftentimes people need to supplement these areas from salt licks, watering troughs, however you want to see it. And then you've got the the stock farmer, low fence, 1.4 meters. I don't know how many feet that is. Traditional sheep fencing that you would think about it. However, this is where the discussion on free range is kind of taking place. and we're going to get into it. So stock fencing is a minimal amount of species that can jump these fences and inherit their natural feeding and migration patterns. However, it limits to a couple of others, and we'll get into it as we go along. Now, the ethical debate is, my personal opinion, excuse me, the ethical debate is hunting in half fence ethical? And should it be frowned upon? Now, to understand this, South Africa has adopted a management system as far as our natural resource is concerned, our land. And we had to do this. Otherwise, we were forced into a lot of predicaments where land would be encroached by overpopulation of our country. Unfortunately, our country is growing at a rapid rate. In the last 20 years, I think we've grown by almost 15 million individuals. Now, to put that into perspective, that's more than a couple of towns of expansion. We're talking about villages, natural habitats of the Transkei migrating into now the Ciskei areas, and the Ciskei are migrating north. A lot of these inhabitants will be taken over by human resources. People are looking for land to put their houses on and develop areas. Our natural example of this is that outside of Queenstown, on your way to Takastad, there's a village called Ntambatemba. Now, when I started hunting a couple of years ago, it was a very, very small village. It's expanded beyond measure. There are thousands of people staying in this little village now. People have come home. It's gotten so big that there are small little establishments, developments that are actually happening in these villages, such as small little supermarkets, convenience stores. Whereas I'm not saying that that shouldn't happen. I'm just saying people have expanded to a point where this is becoming a problem. It's overtaking our natural habitat. Now, although they've encroached onto government land, it's government land that owns that, it has essentially taken away from the habitat that has been provided for the natural game occurring in that area, like your kudu, daka, steenbok, warthogs, eland, mountain rebuck, just to name a few. I'm sure there's plenty others, bat-eared foxes and aardwolf, aardvark, porcupines, all these sort of things. Human intervention has encroached on their habitat and essentially pushed them to a position where they no longer inhabit those areas because of hunting or whatever it may be, whatever the reason is. But essentially the main cause of that is overpopulation. Now, for us to understand what this really means to the greater good of the hunting industry and why we shouldn't frown upon half fence hunting, is because that game farmers have ethically managed their areas for decades now, and they've done so successfully. And yes, no matter how we want to word it, no matter how we want to look at it, unfortunately, careful game management has to happen on these properties. It wouldn't be successful or sustainable if it wasn't managed or never had human intervention to manage it. So I like to call it, and I have always called it, this false ecosystem. We've had to create that because of our situation we are sitting in. Now, South Africa doesn't have a model like some of the northern parts of African countries, such as Tanzania, Zambia, where there's concession basis. Now, individuals will understand that concession, half of it is for photography use, half of it is for local use, and the other half is for hunting rights. South Africa doesn't. Whatever's on your farm is your game to manage, and you've got to manage it accordingly. Now, if your neighbor decides that he's not going to manage his side of the quorum, this is where the bickering and all that sort of stuff starts. So it raises a couple of key points along the way. However, I personally think excuse me, guys, sorry, like I said, my throat is just blowing up right now. But if we look at this picture as a whole, is half fence hunting ethical? My answer to you is I believe it is, and here's my reason why. It allows the animal fair chase. Okay, a lot of the people believe that these hunting areas are small confined spaces of a couple of hectares or a couple of acres. It's not the case, and I've got myself into a lot of trouble by generalizing, but I'm generally certain that majority of the ethical game farmers out there have spaces large enough to make it ethical. You know, some of the properties I've hunted, it's immensely difficult to get close to these animals, and it allows them complete fair chase and complete fair opportunity to get away from the hunter. I mean, there's been days where we've tracked kudu and eland over certain mountain ridges for time and time again. We've had hunters that have come out and only hunted half fence and left without filling their bag. Now, it might sound like a bad pH, but generally speaking, it's a tough going game out there. And it's what's made the hunting industry in South Africa so unique. Because some of the species that we couldn't get in certain areas, for instance, here in the Queenstown area, the lechwe, you now get, there's abundance of them. And there's even so many that cattle and sheep farmers actually have them on their lands now because they do so well. They've developed a way to adapt to this habitat, and they've called it home now. And they know the scenario and the area, the habitat, the footprint, the feeding patterns better than anyone else. So when you are hunting these species, yes, like I said, I've hunted the property we're going to next week. I've hunted there on a number of occasions. And I know that there's a big lechwe around this corner. There's a beautiful eland bull that loves to hang around on that basin. I've seen a couple of kudu bulls. They might have traveled now with the female in the rut season. But that one valley down there, I know I've always seen a good flaring kudu bull. These things happen, but it's unlike the other situation where individuals have done pretty much the same with elk. Being territorial animals, elk do migrate, and I've seen a couple of videos now. I've recently watched, I forget the guy's name now, but he was hunting the caribou migration. Generally speaking, after the migration, what I learned, and I never knew this, what I learned is that those big bulls that generally found home in the pine forests, wherever they were hunting, generally tend to go back there. So if you've seen that bull time and time again there, 9 times out of 10, he's going to be in that certain area. And if you are heading out and you're doing your diligent work as a professional hunter, as a hunting guide, even in the US, and you've scouted these areas before your clients got in, you will generally know where you can find where you've seen a couple of big bulls. We've seen it time and time again. Steve Ranella, Meat Eater, I've seen it where he set up camp. They spot a couple of bulls, a bull elk on the one ridge there. They go back the next day. He's still hanging out there. They go back the next day, missed opportunities, still hanging out there, and eventually they get him. There's not much different to the animal behavior within inside a half fence because they've seen that home. They've made it home. And being territorial animals, essentially, that's what they find as home. Where it does cross the lines is that when resources become limited, and this is why I stress intensely, a good game farm is managed exceptionally well. And I'm saying this with respect. The minute somebody has to supplement their land, we have to ask questions on what are the reasons. Sometimes it could be for very small reasons, overpopulation, they're getting a culling in team, or they're selling it to local South Africans at a reduced rate. A couple of months down the line, But if there is barren land there, and you have got a half fence ranch, and you're preventing that animal from seeking better grazing areas and better water rights and all this sort of stuff, that's where the ethics game comes in and plays a massive role. Now, if I look at outfitters from a general perspective, the places I've hunted, generally you can see that there hasn't been much supplementation. Yes, a salt block here and there. I mean, that's all right, aloe block to keep the ticks off or whatever it may be. But the general amount of food around, natural resourced food, is good. It's rich and healthy. We know exactly that land has been managed correctly. Those animals aren't forced to migrate into certain areas or different areas of the property to go and seek greener forage, to go and seek better foraging opportunities. Some might, but they're not forced to. So that is where that ethics line is drawn. And again, I always say to people, the misconception is animals that get hunted, generally speaking, in South Africa, have more than a fair chance to get away. I believe it's ethical. I believe it's good sportsmanship. And I believe it's good conservation. Because our situation doesn't allow for a perfect world. However, how I feel a lot of the individuals are managing, I think they're doing a great job. Here's what I have an issue with. Is individuals jumping onto social media and saying free range. Now, I've highlighted that free range is no boundary set. There's no fencing. There's nothing. There's nothing to manipulate any sort of drive towards a particular area. Excuse me. What if we got rid of the word of free range? Because generally speaking and realistically speaking, in South Africa, unfortunately, our model doesn't allow for us to use the word free range. Whether we've got a cattle fence or a half fence, we are still manipulating the patterns of certain animal species. Now, I'll give you a perfect example. There's a reason why certain species of animal travel to one destination during the rutting season, whether it be kudu, warthog, because that resource is lush and resourceful. There's an abundance of it, meaning that they can continuously utilize that place as a safe haven for them to utilize for their reproduction area, for their mating. Oh, I don't know why I try and get all scientific with this whole thing. But the minute we've put a fence in between that, and we actually don't try. We don't intentionally put fences in between rutting areas and all that sort of stuff to try and manipulate how the game move. No, we put fences up to boundary off certain sections of the farm, whether we want to rotate stock animals, whether it's our boundary fence, whatever the case may be. Now, because we have these fences, unfortunately, it does manipulate. I mean, a female fallow deer or female impala is not going to jump a cattle fence to move towards a rutting area if she's got a young with her, if she can't do it, if she's never done it before. She's not going to manipulate her system at breaking through these barriers, or she's not going to. They always want to find the easier way around. Let her be under pressure, of course. She'll jump a fence, no issue, move on. But if she doesn't need to, she's not going to. So is it really free range? I hunt a property who is owned by a cattle farmer. And every single year I go there to try and shoot myself a nice big kudu bull. Now, the property next door to me, or next door to that farmer, is half fenced and it's got an alfalfa land on it. Now I know my window of opportunity is the first week of June. If I don't get a kudu bull within the first week of June, I'm never going to see it again. Why? Because his pattern has completely changed. But when he gets inside that half fence, he's manipulated to not get back out. And the farmer's strategically done it so well that when he jumps over the fence, he can't jump back out the same way he came in. So therefore, during the drier periods of the year, he hangs out in that property on the alfalfa land. I'll be honest with you, I think he's been shot already off the land, because a lot of the farmers are doing this right now. There's an abundance of kudu in the area. I don't know how legal everything is with the whole night shooting and stuff. I don't try and get involved with that, but I'm probably never going to see that bull again. I've been watching him for the last 2 or 3 years. He's a beautiful bull. I've had one opportunity at him and I completely missed. Buck fever. It's a bitch. But that's manipulating the situation. The farm I hunt on is a cattle fence, 1.4. Okay? That kudu bull can jump that fence without a doubt. He has got free range to go however he wants. However, when he gets in to the CAE, adequate enclosure area, game fence, he's very manipulated in how he can get back out, either by force, by holding the fence, or another opportunity where he might come. Now the thing is, that bull is not manipulated when he's in the cattle area. So essentially giving him in the name free range will probably fit. But if I go and hunt that bull in that half fence, I can't say that that's a free range bull, because he's part of the adequate enclosure. He doesn't come from there. He comes from the low fence area. So when he gets into that area, he's manipulated to stay there. Therefore, the question of about half fence hunting, and not half fence hunting, but the questionable thing about free range hunting, he's not a free range bull when he's inside there. When he's outside, sure, maybe. But we also don't know along the line how many times he gets influenced from this. You know, he could have been pushed to that low fenced area from being pressurized from a half fence area. We don't know. And the same goes for anything else. When individuals go hunt in the Winterberg, people love to say free range fall redbuck hunting. It's not free range. Gentlemen, I've seen a fall redbuck being pressurized by a helicopter, and I'm yet to see one jump a fence. If it does so, I will take my words back and I would apologize. I have personally never seen it. I've never heard stories of it either. So to say that that animal is free range is highly misconception. Because how does it maneuver in between camps? I'm sure it figures out a way to get through the fence. And I've personally seen fall redbuck go through fences. But it's still restricted. If that fence was perfect, he would still be restricted into that confined area. And people might look at it and say, it's a 1.4 meter fence. You'll be able to jump over it. I've never seen it happen. So why are we pressurizing? Why are we calling this free range? When people hunt trackbuck in the Karoo, I hardly ever see the springbuck jump the fence. Even so much so that when we cull springbuck in the Karoo, and I've seen this with my own eyes, and please guys, there definitely are cases out there where individuals have seen these animals jump fences, and it's arguable. But I'm saying the majority of the situation. When we go and cull springbuck in the Karoo, on a low fence, low 1.4 meter fence, cattle fence, those springbuck in those camps. Now I'm talking about big camps. I'm talking about 800 to 900 hectares of camp. It's so big that we set up teams, pods of individuals around that camp so that we can cull off the old and the weak springbuck out of those groups. And not once do we ever see a springbuck jump the fence. Yes, they might find a hole here and there and they push themselves through and go into the other camp or whatever it may be. But they're manipulated by the fence. And yes, 100%, I've seen a springbuck jump definitely higher than 1.4 meters. But they don't want to. They don't do that, generally speaking. Now, again, people can come after me about saying all of this sort of stuff. Unfortunately, it's just the reality of how things work. If you've got a big springback in that herd, or in that group, in that camp, generally speaking, he's going to hang around there forever until there's a hole in the fence and the whole herd moves through. Or he gets pressurized enough that he actually does jump the fence. I've never seen it, but maybe it does. And likewise with Blessback and all these other things. So instead of trying to bullshit the narrative about free range, let's just call it what it is. It's fair chase. It's not free range hunting. We don't have acres and acres of space that doesn't have a single boundary fence, that doesn't have a single system that gets manipulated. The water, even the dams pushed on the property are manipulating the system to keep the animals there. We've still got to stock the property. New genetics have got to come in. So for the greater good and the greater narrative of this conversation, let's just call it what it is. It's fair chase. The South African model doesn't home enough to say free range. It doesn't. I mean, there was a conversation I had, and this is really, I don't think it's going off topic, but it's really just digressing quite a bit. I argued with a guy on one of the PH groups on WhatsApp. He said to me, or he put it there on the one thing, the best free range Cape Graceback I've ever hunted. So I said, where did you hunt that, bud? He said, no, in the orange trees, in the orchards. And it's a night species. So I said, why do you think it was hanging out there? Oh, no, they're naturally indigenous to the area. Yes, of course they are. 100%. And it's a beautiful ram you shot. But we can't call it free range. Because that orchard is clamped down so that the porcupines and all the other shit can't get in there to chow the roots, to decimate the smaller trees and all that sort of stuff. And, of course, a big ram like that is going to hang around because of the rich nutrients, grass shoots that come through from the drip system they have in place for the trees. So even during winter when there's frost and stuff, there's always fresh grass to be eaten because there's a drip system there. The animal is manipulated to stay there. Through however means or whatever reason you want to call it, he's generally manipulated through human intervention to stay on that property. The farmer never brought him in there. They naturally occur in that area. Beautiful ram, beautiful way to hunt. It's an ethical hunt. It's a magnificent hunt. It's a very, very special hunt. To shoot a Cape Graceback at night in the orchards is something very, very special. I've done it. It's incredible. And it's a feat. It's a feat for any hunter to take that animal off on a tiny 10. We've hunted them in pineapple fields. We've hunted them down on the riverbanks. Animals manipulated to stay there. It's not free range hunting. It's fair chase. That animal has had fair amount of time, fair amount of opportunity to get away from what we are as danger, to find refuge as a safe place within the bush or the nearest areas, and proceed with life from there. However, us as professional hunters, our hunting skills over manipulate the system, and we are fortunate enough to have successful hunts in that way. My personal opinion, ladies and gentlemen, please don't come at me. I love hearing different opinions on this, and I love having this conversation because I think it's a good conversation to have, because I could be wrong. I could be 100% wrong. But my perspective on this thing is free range. I get so frustrated when people utilize it because I think it puts out this false narrative, false expectation. When clients come out, they want to hunt free range kudu. Well, what the hell does a free range kudu look like? I know kudu that have got free reign to go wherever they like. However, they've still got to go through numerous amounts of fences, pass a couple of alfalfa fields, and miss up on a couple of great opportunities as females that humans have had interventions on, but I don't know anything that's free range. It's definitely a fair chase. And that's what frustrates me. It frustrates me about the whole thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that maybe we just need to lose that point, that conversation point, and try and not have this false narrative of, or this false perspective of what our industry really is. Let's own what we do. Let's own that South Africa is, the way we manage our animals, the way we manage our land, is a massive, massive conservation success story. And we've proven it on numerous amounts of species. Oribi, black wildebeest, bontebok, giraffe, you name it. But we don't want to own it. And I could be wrong, but that's just how it is. I just have this feeling that we just don't want to own the situation. Yeah, so I get a little bit frustrated with that, and I get a little bit disheartened, because I think we just need to call it for what it is. I love this country. I love how we hunt it. I love our hunting system. I love the ethics behind it. I believe it works. It's a good way of how it works. And a lot of professional hunters, when I was young, a lot of professional hunters from the northern parts of the continent, DRC, Cameroon, all these guys coming down. And I mean, I've hunted Zambia, I've hunted Tanzania, I've hunted these areas. But they all come down, you're not a real PH if you haven't hunted open areas and free range and this and leave the half fence and all that sort of stuff. Like, cool. Like yes, I understand that. It's that's like there's a massive rush to that. But if we all venture to that and we forget about the goose that laid the golden egg, we kind of defeating the whole point, aren't we, about conservation? And I'm very passionate about South Africa and the South African hunting industry. So I'm going to leave it on that. I thought I'd just jump on here, especially with the misconception that's flying around online and on a couple of the hunting groups. And I hope people find this podcast comes across from a more positive perspective, because that's all I wanted to do. I wanted to leave a positive impact on how people perceive this free range, half fence, low fence, however you want to call it. Because I think I honestly do. I think it's a great conversation to have. But I also think we need to own what we have, and we've got a great system and it works for us. So yeah, guys, that's it. I'll be doing one more podcast before I head off on a 10-day safari. I've got Zach and his family joining me for that safari. He will be jumping on the podcast. So too, I'll have my good mate, you guys have seen him before, Wayne Dell. He'll be joining me on that hunt as the other PH. I can't wait to catch up with him just on a podcast. And yeah, it's been a roller coaster. And I'm forever grateful for all the opportunities you guys have given me, all the love you guys have given me. And I couldn't have done it without you guys. But without further ado, if you are, happy hunting. Until then, stay safe, stay blessed, stay humble. We'll catch up with you guys soon.